Imagine walking through the world with wounds no one sees. Not because they aren't deep, but because you've learned how to smile while bleeding. You've mastered the art of silent endurance, carrying betrayal in your bones like a hidden ache. There are names you no longer speak, not out of hatred, but because your soul flinches at the sound. There are moments etched into your memory, quiet as shadows, that you've buried under layers of grace and restraint. And there are stories, your stories, that you chose never to tell simply because you knew no one would believe how cruel some people can be behind their masks of kindness. Betrayal, when it comes from strangers, stings, but when it comes from those you once trusted, it tears through your spirit with a violence words cannot capture. It's not just the act that hurts, it's the silence after. The way they go on with their lives, laughing, living, untouched by the chaos they left inside you. The way they rewrite the narrative, paint themselves as victims, and erase the chapters where you gave them everything. And in those quiet hours, when your world falls still, you wonder, did anyone see what they did to me? Yes, God did. He saw when they smiled at you with deceit behind their eyes. He saw when they twisted your kindness into weakness, when they mocked your loyalty, when they took advantage of your silence. He saw the conversations behind closed doors, the schemes dressed as friendship, the manipulation hidden in words laced with charm. God took notes, not as a judge eager to condemn, but as a father who knows how to vindicate his children in ways no man can undo. And yet you held your tongue. You could have exposed them, you could have screamed your truth, but something in you, perhaps something holy, chose dignity over drama, patience over punishment. You chose to let heaven handle what your hands could not. And though the silence was heavy and the loneliness suffocating, you stayed the course, believing, hoping that justice delayed was not justice denied. There is something sacred about the pain that goes unspoken. It becomes an altar, a place where tears become prayers, a place where God leans in closer, not because your voice is loud, but because your silence is honest. Heaven is not deaf to betrayal. God is not blind to injustice. He may be patient, but he is not indifferent. And when he rises to defend you, when he moves in his perfect timing, it will not be subtle, it will be seen. Perhaps you've been waiting for an apology that never came, for accountability that never showed up, for a moment where the truth would finally speak for itself. I tell you now, God saw it all, and he didn't just see it. He wrote it down. He took notes on the days you broke down but still showed up, on the nights you cried yourself to sleep but still forgave, on the mornings you felt like giving up but kept walking anyway. Every unspoken hurt, every overlooked sacrifice, every time you chose love instead of revenge, he saw it. And what is seen by God is never wasted. And so, as we open the pages of this sacred truth together, let us journey through the wisdom of what it means when God himself takes note of your betrayal, not to shame you, but to remind you your silence was not weakness, it was strength wrapped in grace. And heaven will honor it. God recorded what you couldn't say out loud. There are moments in life so quietly tragic that the world never hears them. These are not the events that make headlines or elicit sympathy. They are not loud enough to stir a crowd. They are the betrayals we bury beneath our ribs, the kind that force us to smile in the presence of our enemies because we've learned that truth, when spoken too soon, is often mocked rather than honored. You tried to speak once, didn't you? You hinted at your pain. You gave fragments of your truth to those who should have cared, but instead of safety, you were met with silence, or worse, gaslighting, blame, and disbelief. And so, slowly, you taught yourself the discipline of silence. You began carrying your pain like a sacred relic, untouched, unspoken, unshared. Not because it didn't matter, but because it mattered too much to hand it over to those who would trample on it. There were words you could have screamed, evidence you could have shown, secrets you could have unveiled, but something in you, maybe it was wisdom or maybe it was divine restraint, held your tongue. You took the betrayal and folded it quietly into your soul, knowing that speaking might destroy others, but staying silent would destroy you. And yet you still chose silence, not because you were weak, but because you knew some truths are better left in the hands of God than in the mouths of men, and so you waited. You walked into rooms where the betrayers stood tall, applauded, admired, untouched. You watched as they spun narratives, repainted themselves as victims, recast you as the villain, and yet you remained still. People asked why you were so quiet, why you never told your side, why you let it go, but they never understood, did they? You weren't being passive. You were protecting your soul from the corruption of revenge. You weren't being silent. You were allowing heaven to speak on your behalf. Because here is what they don't know. While you said nothing, God was recording everything. He was there when you sat in the car, clutching the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the betrayal. He was there when you stood in the shower and let the water wash away the tears that wouldn't stop. He saw the messages you deleted, the calls you never returned, the nights you stayed up replaying the moment your trust was shattered into silence. And he wrote it all down, not with the pen of accusation, but with the ink of justice, because to God, no betrayal goes unnoticed. No silent tear is missed. No unspoken grief is lost in the void. When you couldn't speak, he listened. When you couldn't explain, he understood. When you were too exhausted to even pray, he still counted every sigh as sacred. You were never alone in that silence. You were simply handing over the microphone to the only one who could truly speak for you. Do you understand how powerful that is? That God, the creator of galaxies, the one who holds stars in his hands, paused to listen to the whisper of your breaking heart. That he, the righteous judge, didn't need your explanation to validate your pain. He was already there when it happened. He saw the betrayal unfold, each lie, each manipulation, each cruel dismissal. He watched them turn away from you, and yet he turned toward you. And while they celebrated their deception, he documented their choices. You may feel invisible in your pain, but heaven has been watching with clarity. Every moment you endured silently has been preserved, not for pity, but for purpose. There will come a time when the truth will not only rise, it will roar. But until then, trust this: the silence you've kept is not lost. It is sacred. And God, yes, God, has written every page of your untold story with the care of a father who promises to make all things right in his time. Your pain became a prayer. Heaven couldn't ignore. Pain is strange. It doesn't always come with screams or tears. Sometimes it just sits inside you, quiet, burning, unspoken. And when betrayal is the cause, it becomes more than just a wound. It becomes a sacred ache, a constant reminder that love, when misused, has the power to wound deeper than hate ever could. But something beautiful happens when that pain is surrendered, not to revenge or bitterness, but to God. That moment when you sat alone, unable to explain why you felt so broken, that was a prayer. That day you smiled through gritted teeth because you had to be strong for everyone else while your world was falling apart. That was a prayer. You may not have spoken eloquent words. You may not have whispered long petitions, but heaven heard everything, not because your mouth moved, but because your heart did. God hears pain as clearly as he hears praise, perhaps even more clearly. Because pain is honest, it has no time for performance. It is raw, it is real, and when it is lifted toward heaven in surrender, it becomes one of the most powerful forms of worship. And so your pain became an offering of trust, because you believed that God could heal what others destroyed, an offering of humility, because you chose to kneel when you could have struck back, an offering of hope, because somewhere deep within you, you still believed that redemption was possible, even if justice felt delayed. That kind of prayer cannot be ignored, not by heaven, not by a God who calls himself your defender, not by a father who bottles every tear and numbers every hair. The moment your pain crossed the threshold into surrender, the courtroom of heaven opened. The angels stood in witness, the judge leaned forward, and a case was opened, not against you, but for you. Because pain tells a story that words cannot. It says, I've been hurt, but I will not become the one who hurt me. It says, I've been broken, but I will not break others in return. It says, I will bleed quietly if I must, but I will never let darkness harden my heart. These silent declarations echo through the heavens like trumpets. They rattle the gates of divine justice. They move God, not out of pity but out of covenant, because he promised to be near the brokenhearted. He promised to avenge the oppressed. He promised to restore what was lost. And when God makes a promise, he does not lie. So, every time you whispered, "Why, God?" he listened. Every time you asked, "When will it end?" he leaned in. Every time you said nothing at all, he still heard. And in the silence of your suffering, a storm was forming, a holy storm, one not meant to destroy you, but to deliver you. And when it arrives, it will not only cleanse your wounds, it will rewrite your story. Because your pain was never a waste. It was never forgotten. It was never ignored. It was a prayer, and heaven was listening. Their actions signed their own judgment. In the stillness of divine justice, there is no need for a courtroom, no need for a jury. God sees the truth as it is, not as it is portrayed. He does not need your defense, because he has perfect knowledge of every detail, every whispered lie, every hidden agenda, every false witness that rose against you. And what they did in secret, thinking no one would know, was already seen by the one who never blinks. There's a certain arrogance in those who betray. They believe they can act with impunity, spin the story in their favor, and walk away unscathed. But betrayal is never a solitary event. It echoes. It builds its own judgment. It carries with it a consequence written not in human words, but in eternal law. When they acted against you, whether with deceit, gossip, manipulation, or abandonment, they signed something invisible, a record, a decree, a seed of self-destruction planted in the soil of their choices. God does not rush judgment. He lets them speak. He lets them perform. He lets them enjoy the applause for a moment, and then he lets the weight of their actions grow heavy in their own hands. Not to embarrass them, but to reveal who they really are, because a lie always eventually exhausts itself. Deception is a performance that cannot be sustained, and when the mask begins to crack, the truth rises, not with rage, but with clarity. You don't need to worry about proving what they did. You don't need to seek revenge or build a case. Their actions already built it for you. Their own hands sculpted the structure of their downfall. God simply waits until the time is right to reveal what was always there. He doesn't need to manufacture a reckoning. He allows them to walk straight into it, and they will. Because when you hurt someone with a pure heart, when you wound someone who only ever wanted the best for you, there is a spiritual consequence. Not karma as the world defines it, but divine response. A sacred balancing, an echo that returns louder than the initial blow. It may not happen when you expect it, and it may not look like what you imagined, but it comes. Because God cannot be mocked. What a man sows, he shall also reap. You didn't have to curse them. Your silence was enough. You didn't have to defend yourself. Your restraint was your strength. And while they laughed, convinced they had gotten away with it, a slow unraveling began, one visible only to heaven at first, but soon enough the fruit of their betrayal will hang on the branches for all to see, not because you exposed them, but because God allowed truth to bloom in its season. So rest, not in bitterness, but in confidence. The truth doesn't need a loudspeaker, it needs time, and God has been counting the seconds. Your silence was a seed for divine vindication. The world teaches you to fight back, to speak louder than the noise, to strike before you are struck again. But heaven honors a different kind of strength, the strength to be silent when you have every reason to shout. When you held back your truth, when you chose not to retaliate, not to reveal what you knew, not to hurt back, you weren't being weak. You were planting a seed of trust, a seed of surrender, a seed that only heaven knew would bloom in due time. You see, silence is not the absence of action. It is often the highest form of spiritual discipline. It is a loud declaration that you believe in something greater than yourself, that you trust the author of justice more than your own need for closure, that you believe the one who sees all will not let betrayal go unanswered. While they mocked you, you watered that seed with your tears. While they lied about you, you covered it with prayer. While they moved on, unaffected, you stayed rooted in the belief that truth doesn't need to be rushed. It just needs to be real. And what you didn't know was that heaven was preparing a harvest in the background. Every act of restraint, every moment you turned the other cheek, every second you stayed silent instead of screaming in pain, it was all recorded, not just in God's book, but in the soil of your future. And when divine vindication arrives, it will not look like revenge. It will look like restoration. It will feel like peace. It will be the kind of clarity that doesn't destroy your enemies, it simply exposes them. You didn't waste your silence. You consecrated it. And because you allowed God to be your defender, He will fight in a way you never could. His vindication doesn't come to embarrass others, it comes to elevate you. It doesn't come as a loud parade, it comes like the dawn. Soft, undeniable, full of light, but it begins with that seed you planted. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sold, slandered, forgotten. He had every reason to hate, to retaliate, to shout his innocence from the prison walls. But he waited, he trusted, he stayed faithful in the silence. And in time, the very ones who betrayed him came kneeling before the one they thought they had destroyed. Not because Joseph rose up in vengeance, but because God lifted him in honor. The same principle holds for you. Your silence was not passive, it was powerful. It was your way of saying, I trust that heaven has eyes, and it does. God saw what they did to you, and He saw what you didn't do in return. That silence, so heavy, so lonely, so misunderstood, was not for nothing. It was the soil in which your vindication is being grown. So don't dig it up now, just because you can't see the roots forming. Don't rush it. Don't let the enemy convince you that silence means defeat. It means something sacred is growing, and when it blooms, it will speak louder than anything you could have ever said. God protected your reputation while they tried to ruin it. There is a pain unlike any other, the pain of watching your name be dragged through the dust by those who once claimed to love you, to be misrepresented, misunderstood, and mislabeled while remaining silent is not weakness. It is spiritual warfare. Betrayal often doesn't end with the wound. It continues in the lies told afterward, in the twisted tales designed to assassinate your character. And yet, through it all, God was building a hedge of protection around your name, even when it looked like your reputation was being destroyed. It is one thing to be hurt in secret. but to be publicly slandered while privately suffering, to be judged without trial, to be gossiped about without defense. This is agony. They spoke as if they knew your heart. They fabricated narratives, twisting truth into weapons, and the world, so eager for drama, believed the headlines without ever seeking the truth. You felt the sting of judgment, the burn of betrayal, and the cold silence of those who didn't ask for your side of the story. And still, you stayed silent. Why? Because some truths are not meant to be defended by the accused, but revealed by the Almighty. There were moments when you wanted to scream, to expose everything, to shout your innocence until the air trembled with truth. But something in you, perhaps wisdom, perhaps divine restraint, held you back. You chose dignity over defense, and in that choice you invited God to step in and fight for you. While they tore your name apart, heaven was protecting the essence of who you are. Because God does not define you by public opinion, He defines you by eternal identity. And though your reputation may have been questioned by men, your character was confirmed by heaven. Their lies were temporary. God's verdict is eternal. You see, when someone tries to ruin your name, they're not just attacking your image. They're attacking your legacy. Your ability to walk into rooms with credibility, to speak and be heard, to lead and be trusted, and that's why it hurts so deeply. Because they weren't just trying to hurt your feelings, they were trying to erase the truth about you. But here's the miracle. The more they spoke, the more they revealed themselves. And the more you remained silent, the more God positioned you for a redemption that would silence every accuser. It is written, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn." But notice the order. First the tongue rises, the lies fly, the defamation spreads, and then God lifts you. Not to speak against them, but to stand above them. Because divine vindication doesn't always come with thunder, sometimes it comes with elevation. God doesn't clear your name by arguing with your enemies, He clears it by blessing you in front of them. Think of how many times He shielded you from conversations you weren't even aware of. How many rumors died before they reached the ears of someone who mattered. How many accusations fell flat because the Spirit whispered to someone's heart, "This is not who they are." You may never know the full extent of what God blocked on your behalf, but you must believe He was working even when you weren't speaking. They thought they were destroying you, but they were only revealing themselves. And God was taking notes, not just of their betrayal, but of your restraint. Every time you turned the other cheek, heaven took notice. Every time you prayed instead of plotted, your name was written in light, while theirs began to darken under the weight of their own words. Because you cannot curse what God has blessed, and you cannot erase a name that is written in God's book. So let them talk, let them twist the story, let them whisper in corners, let them write their false narratives. Just don't respond with the same poison. Stay rooted in grace. Because the time will come when God will prepare a table for you, not in secret, but in the presence of those very people, not to humiliate them, but to elevate you. Your reputation is not in their hands, it never was. It has always been cradled in the hands of the one who knows your heart, hears your silence, and writes your story with justice. Betrayal didn't break you, it revealed you. It is a strange mercy, the kind that only pain can offer. To be betrayed is to be shattered, but in the shattering, something deeper is unveiled, something you didn't know was there, something they never intended for you to discover. Betrayal, though meant to break you, becomes the fire through which your truest self is revealed, not to the world, not even to your enemies, but to you, when they turned their backs, when they walked away without warning, when they used your loyalty as leverage and your kindness as currency. They weren't just exposing their hearts. They were unknowingly drawing a map to yours. And what was uncovered in that silent suffering? A quiet strength, a sacred endurance, a capacity to love that does not retreat into bitterness. They thought they were ending something in you, but God was beginning something through it. You see, betrayal is not just an event, it is a mirror. It forces you to look at yourself with terrifying clarity, to ask questions most people spend their lives avoiding. Who am I when I'm no longer praised? Who am I when I'm rejected by the people I would have died for? Who am I when I have every right to hate, but still choose to love? These questions do not appear when life is soft and relationships are easy. They arrive when the knife goes in. And only then do you begin to realize that your soul is stronger than your scars. They tried to silence you, but your silence became your sanctuary. They tried to bury you in shame, but you learned how to pray beneath the weight of misunderstanding. They tried to define you by the worst moment, but heaven whispered your name through the ruins, reminding you, this is not your end. Because the truth is, betrayal reveals what applause cannot. Praise hides weakness. Comfort breeds complacency. But pain peels back the layers. It strips away the performance. It lays bare your fears and your faith, your anger and your awe. And somehow in the stillness of that sacred exposure, God steps closer, not to criticize what he sees, but to purify it, not to condemn, but to claim. You were never more his than in the moment you were left by those who swore they never would. And while they laughed, while they moved on as though you were nothing, God was rebuilding you in secret. He was teaching you how to walk without applause, how to give without expectations, how to endure without explanations. He was pulling strength out of you, deep strength, that only surfaces in fire. This is why you didn't break, not because you weren't wounded, not because it didn't hurt, but because what lives inside of you is not made of the same brittle substance that lives inside of those who betrayed you. You were forged differently. The betrayal didn't destroy you because it had no permission to touch the part of you that is eternal. They could shatter your plans, your trust, your sense of safety, but they could not shatter your calling. They could not undo the destiny God wrote over your life. And even if every word they spoke tried to erase you, heaven kept writing. You didn't just survive betrayal, you became something through it. You became someone who understands what love costs. Someone who knows what it's like to be misunderstood but still remain kind. Someone who has walked through fire and come out refined. Your compassion has depth now. Your wisdom has teeth. Your love has roots. You don't just feel pain, you carry it with grace. And that grace is not weakness, it is holy power. Most people only show their best side, their curated smiles, their polished words. But you have met yourself in the silence after betrayal. You have learned to sit with sorrow and not be undone by it. You have learned how to be soft without being foolish, how to forgive without forgetting who they revealed themselves to be. And perhaps most importantly, you have learned to stop explaining your worth to people determined to misunderstand you. Betrayal revealed you. Not the version of you that pleases others, not the one who fits into rooms by shrinking, but the version who walks with God through shadowed valleys, trusting that even when everything is taken, your identity remains untouched, because it was never given to you by people. It was given by the one who knew you before you were betrayed, before you were broken, before you were born. The reckoning is coming, but so is your restoration. There is a slowness to God's justice that often feels unbearable. In a world that moves quickly, where the guilty often seem to flourish and the innocent are forgotten, it can seem as though betrayal wins, that those who harmed you, lied about you, used you, discarded you, walk away untouched, even rewarded, and you are left in the aftermath, holding the ruins of your trust, waiting for something to make it right. But God's justice is not rushed, because it is not reactionary. It is deliberate, perfect, timed with divine precision, and when He moves, it is not with chaos, but with order, like the tide reclaiming the shore, slow but certain, quiet but unstoppable. The reckoning is not vengeance. It is the great unveiling. It is when the fruit of every action ripens and falls from the tree, revealing whether the roots were poisoned or pure. It is when the masks wear thin and truth, steady and patient, rises from the silence you once carried alone. The people who once slandered you, twisted your story, and gloried in your downfall will have to sit in the light of what they built with their own hands, not because you exposed them, but because time and truth do not stay buried forever. God does not forget. He delays so that the reckoning arrives not merely to punish, but to teach, to reveal the difference between grace and exploitation, between love and manipulation, between truth and image, and when it comes, it will come in a way that pierces deeper than any word you could have said. Because divine justice speaks not only to the situation, it speaks to the soul. But here's the greater promise. While the reckoning is unfolding for them, restoration is rising for you. God doesn't simply make the crooked straight. He rebuilds what was torn down. He doesn't merely repay what was lost. He multiplies it in ways that silence your doubt. You who were left in the ashes, who questioned your worth, who wondered if anything good could grow from this betrayal, you are the one He is lifting, slowly maybe, quietly perhaps, but the rise has begun, and it will not be small. He is restoring your heart, not to what it was, but to something wiser, stronger, softer in the right ways, and firmer in the places where you once bent too much. He is restoring your voice, not so you can defend yourself to those who never listened, but so you can speak with authority in rooms where your silence used to echo. He is restoring your dignity, not by humiliating those who harmed you, but by adorning you with grace they can never take from you again. This is not about revenge. It never was. It's about redemption. It's about a God who saw what happened behind closed doors, who heard the conversations when you weren't in the room, who witnessed the intentions behind every action, and He, unlike them, knows how to restore not just what was taken, but what you never knew you lost. You won't see it all at once. Restoration comes in layers, a moment of peace that catches you off guard, a conversation that reminds you you're not broken, an opportunity that finds you when you stop chasing approval, a joy that blooms in the places they tried to scorch. Slowly the pieces return, but different, better, reformed by fire, washed in grace, guarded by wisdom. And as for them, let them watch. Let them see how God lifts what man tries to bury. Let them see how He answers the prayers you didn't speak aloud. Let them see the quiet glory of someone who was wronged and yet now walks with peace that can't be faked or fabricated. Because nothing confounds the wicked more than the joy of the one they tried to destroy. You are not forgotten, you are not forsaken, and you are not finished. The reckoning is real, but so is your restoration. And God is in the business of doing both, not to satisfy your flesh, but to honor your faith. You did not imagine it. You were betrayed, not once, not lightly, but deeply, and by those you trusted most. And though the world may never fully understand the weight you carried, God does. He saw it all. The silent tears, the forced smiles, the ache in your soul that words could never express. He saw the betrayal you didn't speak about, and He took notes. not to store them in some heavenly archive of pity, but to build your vindication, to prepare a restoration so complete that it would not only heal you, it would make you whole in a way you've never been before. Yes, you were hurt. Yes, it changed you, but it didn't ruin you. It revealed your strength, refined your spirit, and reminded you that your identity is not anchored in how others treat you, but in who God says you are. You are chosen, protected, held, and every moment you stayed silent, every time you chose restraint, every second you trusted God more than your own desire to be heard, heaven recorded it. Not to reward you later, but to walk with you now, and so let this be your final truth. You are not waiting for justice, you are walking through it. Each step you take in peace is a judgment on their cruelty. Each breath you breathe in grace is a rebuke to their slander. Each blessing that finds you is a reminder that God has always been on your side. The betrayers may never confess. The world may never apologize. But your soul is not held hostage by their silence. You have been released into favor, into peace, into a future not built on the brokenness of what they did, but on the foundation of what God is doing. He is not done with you, He is just beginning. So to you, the quiet one, the kind one, the one who loved deeply and was wounded silently, take heart. You are not forgotten, you are not invisible, and you are most certainly not defeated. Walk forward now with your head high, not because they finally saw the truth, but because God always did. And that is more than enough. Stay strong, stay faithful, and remember, He took notes.